Hey, Astro Kids, and welcome back. And this is my interpretation of what it looks like to have Rahu in your second house, Ketu in your eighth house. Let's go ahead and jump right into this. So before we get into this, we first have to understand who are these entities of Rahu and Ketu. This is coming from the story of the churning of the ocean of milk. There was a great battle between the Devatas and the Asuryas. And at the time, the Devatas were looking for a solution as there were many casualties on both sides. And the solution to this was to get the amrita, or the nectar, from the churning of the ocean. But in order to churn this great ocean, the Devatas needed the help of the Asuryas. And the plan was for the Devatas to get this nectar and not the Asuryas. But as this nectar came up from the ocean, the Asuryas took it and ran. And so Lord Vishnu stepped in and helped out the Devatas by disguising himself as a beautiful woman named Mohini. And Vishnu was able to deceive the Asuryas. He charmed and enchanted them with his looks. And so through this, he was able to secretly give the amrita to the Devatas behind his back. But there was one Asurya that did not fall for this, by the name of Swarabhanu. And Swarabhanu is the entity that we now know as Rahu and Ketu. Swarabhanu disguised himself as one of the Devatas and sat between the sun and the moon. And he was able to get a drop of the amrita, but not before the sun and the moon exposed him as an impostor. And due to this, Lord Vishnu beheaded him. And usually, when Lord Vishnu beheads an entity, they go off into liberation. But because Swarabhanu had taken a drop of this elixir, part of him was stuck in this incarnation cycle, while the other half of him went off into liberation. And so Ketu is the body of this entity. It is the liberated being that is all about moving towards this higher spiritual evolution. While Rahu was the head of this entity that was trapped in this reincarnating cycle of coming here into this material existence. And so Rahu represents our material incarnation. It's what brings us into this life. And so Rahu is the unresolved karma. It is the reason why we are here. It is all about our desires, our ambitions. It is all to do with the material world. Rahu is a very worldly entity, is very intellectual, is very much about this modern mundane reality that we live in. Rahu is also very unconventional and shocking. And we can see this in both of these lunar nodes of Rahu and Ketu, that they both have a destabilizing effect. But in particular, Rahu is about standing out from the crowd. It is about becoming unconventional, being rebellious, stirring up controversy. So Rahu is in the world creating this controversy, while Ketu is detached from the material world. Ketu is all about our spiritual growth and evolution. Ketu holds the secrets to our past lives. It is all about the skills, the talents that we have developed. And so Ketu is all about the talents that we naturally have. If you are gifted in an area without any kind of farmer training, something that just comes naturally to you, this is related back to Ketu. Ketu is related to our intuition, to our creativity, to our ability to tap into other worlds and dimensions. Ketu is introverted. It's about going within, where Rahu is extroverted. Although, because Ketu is what we have already experienced, it also is what we are detached from. And so there's a tendency to dissociate in the area that Ketu is positioned in. So what happens when Rahu goes into your second house, Ketu in the eighth house. Well, first we have to start with Ketu because Ketu is representing your past life experience. It is the talents, the knowledge, the experience that you are bringing with you into this lifetime. And so K2 being in the eighth house is telling us that you have gone through a lot of difficult situations in a previous incarnation. So with that, there is a feeling of instability, a feeling of not being able to have the security that you want in life. And so K2 in this eighth house can give you a feeling of constantly going through ups and downs in life, of constantly experiencing situations where you want to feel more secure within yourself. And this ultimately leads you to becoming self reliant, self sufficient, which we will talk more about when we get to Rahu in your second house. K2 in the eighth house, because it is a planet that is all about our spiritual evolution in this eighth house, which is a hidden house. This shows that you are someone who is all about getting deep down to the truth. You have a strong ability to investigate, to research, to dig into hidden matters. And on a more mystical or spiritual side, this can give you an interest in astrology, tarot, all sorts of mystical subjects. But on a mundane level, it simply can mean that you are someone who is very skilled in research, very skilled in understanding the truth behind everything. K2 in the eighth house can mean that you become detached from your in laws, detached from your spouse's family or shared resources within your marriage. Because remember that the eighth house is second from the seventh house. So it is the security of the marriage, of the partnership. And so with this, there can be difficulties in this area where you become detached from this, where you feel that you are not being supported by your spouse's family, or you are not giving a ton of attention to your spouse's family in this area. The eighth house also has a lot to do with sexuality, with intimacy, and K2 in this area can make you prone to using sexuality as a form of security or wealth, of having some sort of psychological power or gain some source of security through this. And you want to be careful with this because the eighth house is also a house of long-term illnesses. And so you can develop sexual diseases through this house. This is an area that you want to be more cautious in. Another thing that can be seen with K2 in the eighth house is there can be disturbances within your early upbringing that make you feel less secure. And again, that has to do with Rahu in the second house as well. But this can take you away from what's familiar. And this K2 in the eighth house is going to give an aspect onto your fourth and 12th house when you go through the particular dasha period of K2 in the eighth house. So that can take you to foreign places. That can take you away from your home, away from your family, where you are trying to find your own sense of security. There can be sudden changes in life, all sorts of tragic situations that force you to go through these dramatic changes. So you're a person who tends to go through a lot of transformation in life. This also can mean that your home situation, as it aspects onto the fourth house, is disturbed in some way. And because K2 is open to the astral plane, there can be some negative spiritual influences within your home space. So this can mean that you need to get away from your home. You need to clear your home. You need to find a sense of security. This entire axis of K2 in the eighth house and Rahu in the second house is about balancing out the spiritual and the material. Because the eighth house is one of the moksha houses. It is all about spiritual progress. And the second house is about our security. And so for some of you, you also in a past life were not able to gain your own sense of security. You were all about relying on other people. But in this life, with K2 in the eighth house, you may find that there's a lack of support, that you're unable to get the support, the resources that you need from other people. And this can show up materially or emotionally speaking, where you may feel neglected or may feel that you are unable to rely on other people. So K2 in this eighth house really is about gaining your own sense of security. This can make you very obsessed with money and security. You can have a very possessive tendency to hold on to people, to hold on to situations, to hold on to possessions for this sense of security that you're seeking. This also can make you very untrusting when it comes to your money and possessions. You don't necessarily like to share your money or your resources with other people. And so there can be a tendency to be deceitful, to hide things about your wealth, or to do secret things related to your wealth and security. So it is important to be cautious in these areas, especially when you're going through the K2 and Rahu Dasha. You can find that these are bringing up some karmic situations related to this. You also can find some disappointment when it comes to inheritances, when it comes to wills, legacies. You may receive all of these things, but you may not be able to use it in the way that you want, or you may have to use it in an emergency situation. So keep in mind that this eighth house is all about sudden events. And K2 is very similar to the energy of this eighth house, as well as it is the co-ruler of Scorpio. So you can go through these dramatic situations where there are emergency situations, where you have to rely on yourself, where you have to find a sense of security in life. With K2 in the eighth house, you can develop your intuition and spiritual abilities. This is excellent for anyone who is into astrology, mysticism, any kind of healing professions, anything that is related to spirituality. And even on a mundane level, this can connect you to healing as well, because this eighth house is all about emergency situations, and it is also all about surgery, about healing, about long-term health, all of these situations. This can get you into an accident at some point in your life, but you're also able to gain the support, to gain the help that you need to overcome these difficult situations. For some of you, you can have strange illnesses with this, because K2 is a very mystical and misunderstood influence coming into this eighth house of long-term diseases. So you could have an illness that is very mysterious or that is hidden. You could be misdiagnosed. You could have all sorts of illnesses that you're completely unaware of. So this can come up through this K2 in this eighth house, where there are strange situations around illnesses. Once again, you can have all sorts of imbalances as far as emotions and spiritual connections. So again, you can become disturbed on a psychic level, on an emotional level, where you're going through these turbulent psychological experiences. And this is where there's a need to stabilize your life. Once again, it is all about coming into a place of self-reliance, of inner security, finding that security within yourself. Sometimes with this position, this can show on the negative side that there is a vengeful or vindictive quality here as well. Holding on to grudges, holding on to vengeful thoughts and feelings can come through this K2 in the eighth house. And of course, you want to see where K2 is placed. What sign is it in? Is it in conjunction with any planets? Is it being aspected by any planets? All of this is important to see within the chart before coming to any conclusions. Sometimes this also can show separation from your spouse. Again, it can make you very disconnected from your spouse's family, but also even from your spouse due to this mistrust, this inability to feel secure. And so it's very important that you are able to find this security within yourself. This will resolve issues within relationships. K2 in the eighth house also could mean that you love your privacy. The eighth house is a very secretive house. Again, this house is relative to the sign of Scorpio, which is a hidden and mysterious influence. So with K2 in this eighth house, your comfort zone can be in privacy and isolation. You love to be alone, to have your own space. And because of this, sometimes you can push other people away. And we're going to talk a little bit more about this when we get into Rahu in the second house, because sometimes your speech can push other people away. This also shows that you have a survival instinct to you. So, although at times you may feel that there's a lack of support or a lack of things going in the direction that you want, you do have an inner strength within you to weather the storms of life. Because once again, this eighth house is all about sudden changes. It is a house of transformation. So, you are able to go through difficult situations and to come out of them. Sometimes sharing your resources or giving your resources away to other people can result in losses where other people are taking advantage of you. So it is important with K2 in this eighth house to be careful about any kind of shared resources, anything that involves joint finances. These situations are important to pay close attention to. This also can be a position that can grant you some luck and fortune in foreign places. Once again, this can get you to change residency, it can get you to travel, all of these scenarios where you are leaving what's familiar to you. So let's talk about Rahu in the second house. With Rahu in the second house, this can make you very much attached and dependent upon your family, especially at a young age. So, especially if you're going through this Rahu Mahadasha at a younger age, you can find that you become extremely dependent, but this can lead to disappointments because Rahu in the second house is a very destabilized influence. And ultimately, the second house is about building your own resources, it's about your finances, your security, your values. All of this becomes very important with Rahu in the second house. And so, this is about moving towards these things on your own. And with Rahu in the second house, sometimes you can cling on to things and it can result in losses. And there is almost a self-fulfilling prophecy to this where you are afraid of losses. You are trying to gain a sense of security. But this is looking for you to have your own sense of security, not to cling on to things outside of yourself. Sometimes with Rahu in the second house, there can be eating disorders, there can be issues with addictions to drugs and substances, because the second house is about what we take into our bodies. The second house rules over the mouth. So you do want to be careful about any kind of eating habits, any kind of situations that are involving taking substances into your body. And especially because Rahu is representing poisons and medicines. So you do want to be cautious in this area about becoming obsessed or dependent upon substances and other factors that you're putting into your body. And of course, Rahu in the second house, particularly when you're going through the Dasha period, is going to aspect onto your second house. So that can open up the doorway to some health concerns due to this overindulgence or clinging or dependency in this area. Rahu in the second house definitely can give a desire to build wealth, to become self sufficient, especially as you get older. And this can give you some positive results because Rahu is also going to aspect onto your 10th house of career. So when you become hardworking, when you put the effort in to be independent, to be self-reliant, this gives you those results. Rahu in this house is excellent for increasing your wealth, for bringing in all sorts of comforts and possessions that you are seeking. Sometimes Rahu in the second house also can mean that you come from a wealthy or a prominent household as well. There can be something about your family background that stands out. Along with this can make you a very attractive person because not only is the first house related to your appearance, but also the second house is ruling over the face and throat area. So you can have a very attractive appearance that is magnetic to other people. This can give you a very powerful presence and character that can draw other people in. And especially when it comes to the way that you speak. Rahu in this second house can give you very powerful speaking that can draw other people in, that can be very magnetic, very seductive, very alluring. The way that you speak has an effect on other people. Along with this, though, going back to what I said about K2 in that eighth house, sometimes pushing other people away through your speech can come up, as well as Rahu in this second house can make you extremely honest, brutally honest, to the point where you are making statements that hurt other people, that drive other people away. So sometimes you can be too forthright with Rahu in this second house. It is an area to watch out for because it can cause issues, particularly when dealing with supervisors, dealing with bosses, dealing with work situations, as Rahu is aspecting that sixth and 10th house from its position. This also can make you very skilled in areas dealing with banking, dealing with money management, all of this. You can make a career for yourself in an area that is related to money. Along with this, your speaking voice can make you very talented when it comes to all sorts of presentations, lectures, situations where you are putting your voice forward into the world. Even performing arts, public speaking, all of these areas are excellent for you. When you go through the Rahu Mahadasha, this can put a boost in your status. Sometimes you can actually gain wealth that you weren't expecting to gain. You can rise up the ladder quickly with this position. So, although sometimes you doubt your ability to be independent or to gain the resources that you want out of life, you do have this ability, and this can take you towards great fame, great success, great wealth. This can also make you very interested in the finer aspects of life because, again, this second house is all about your possessions. And this second house is relative to the sign of Taurus, which can be a very materialistic energy. So you are very much into arts, into music, into the finer foods and finer experiences of life. And again, you can gain all of this through Rahu's position, depending upon how Rahu is placed in your chart. You do want to be careful, again, as I mentioned earlier, about just sharing your resources or giving money away. Rahu in this second house can cause some issues because Rahu is illusion. So you want to be mindful about how you are managing your finances and resources because there can be issues where other people are taking money from you and you are losing because of this. This can also make you very talented at dealing with conflicts. Again, Rahu in this second house can give you a powerful speaking voice, but also as it aspects onto the sixth house, you can be very skilled in debate, in dealing with enemies, obstacles, challenges. So you are a natural fighter. Again, Ketu in that eighth house gives you this survival energy where you are able to overcome the ups and downs of life. With Rahu in this second house, you are extremely ambitious. You want to gain what you are after in life, and you are able to achieve this. The biggest issue with this placement is, again, going to be holding on to things for the sake of security, of this taking things into your body and holding on to things, clinging on to things. This can cause you some major difficulties. So you do want to be careful about this because this can become obsessive. And in some cases, this is something that requires some help or assistance through a medical physician or through therapy. It's extremely important that you are continuing to be independent and to gain a sense of security within yourself through your values, through your own individual effort. With Rahu in this second house, it also is going to give you a unique set of values that are true to you. You can also develop values through foreign cultures, foreign religions, sometimes through foreign relationships. You could get involved in relationships with foreigners. All of these situations can develop a philosophy or value system that is outside of your family of origin. So it is important to develop your own sense of independence, of self reliance, of values, of ability to gain wealth and security. All of this is a part of your destiny and purpose.